Thank you so much. I'm Jordi Torrent. I will be moderating this session. I'm representing here Medports, the Mediterranean Port Association. Who might have seen me elsewhere as Port of Barcelona, who is the organization paying my salary. But here I am representing Medports, the Mediterranean Port Association. One of its founding members is Malta Freeport here. Hi, David. Nice to see you. So I'm very happy to be moderating this session with some of the front runners and some of the newcomers of OPS in Europe. I'm probably the only person here who is not an expert on OPS, so I'm not going to make very complicated questions. I leave this up to the audience later to make them difficult questions. So I'm going to set up the scene with a very general question, and I will give the floor to each one of you, maybe starting by the end, by Anna, and going backwards. Yeah, I guess you've seen who is here, so I'm going to put the first question, I insist, to set up the scene on each one of you, which some of you might know it, some of you may not know it. What OPS do you have in your port? In which segments? Cruise, containers, ferries, etc. How many calls did you? How many connections did you do in 2024? Maybe in the first semester of 2025. And which were the main problems you encountered when deploying OPS in your port? It's 3 questions in one, so answer the way you want or can. So Anna, the floor is yours first, please.
Thank you, Jordi. It's okay? Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting us to be here. Well, I think that a starting point for just to explain a little where we are in the Port of Barcelona, we have at the, let's say, starting point, we have 3 OPS in operations, 2 for containers terminal and another one for ferry terminal. If we try to count this in numbers, let's say that since 2024 we have done more than 30 containers connections, some of them around 90 hours. So it's a good goal, a good achievement. Sorry. And in case of ferries, since last March 2025, we have done more than 130 connections because we are mainly connecting a ferry vessel every day that it arrives at the Port of Barcelona. So, well, we are really happy because this means, again, in number, more than, around 3,000 tons that we have saving, and at the end, we are doing that for saving emission, no? Where we are. So this is only the beginning, I said before, and this is only the beginning because we are now currently building a new substation to give power to the rest of the port, because it has been said during the whole during all the panel that one of the main problems could be to have energy for develop the rest of the system. So we have 80 megawatts, that is huge, and this allow us to implement the whole Nexigen project, that is how we call to our electrification plan, to arrive with this substation and a new smart grid to all the keys to later on develop the rest of the OPS. So now we are also building another OPS for cruises, the first one for cruises that is building, so it's not like this one that is Marbella in operation. And we are tendering also this week another one for cruises. Jordi, you have, and I finish with that because you are, or you have, as all also to speak about problems. I prefer to say challenges. I think that we have a lot of challenges to face. We have spoke about the energy, about the investment this morning, also in other panel, about how the ship owner are ready or are not ready, or they are going to connect or not. but maybe for me, or at least at this moment at the Port of Barcelona, we are very worried. We have been very worried 5 years ago about that, but we have been like working in doing things, and now we are very worried about the business model. Very, very worried, and this is something that is going to we are going to do next year. To think a lot, to work a lot about the business model, that I think that there are different business models for nearly every port, and this is, for me, the crucial challenge. I think so.
Okay, thank you so much, Anna. I will give the floor now to Jens Erik Hagen from the port of Oslo in Norway.
Yeah, thank you. I can start with why we are building that much shore power in the first place, because in 2018, we got a climate action plan together with the city in collaboration. And the target was to cut emissions by 85% within 2030 for all port-related emissions, also including sailing in and out 7 nautical miles. And we started with shore power in 2010, 2011. We built shore power for the RoPax ferries to Germany, and then we continued with shore power for the international ferries to Denmark in 2019, and then we have started building things faster with the experience we have gotten. So then we built shore power for the cement carriers and dry bulk, and cement carriers is quite interesting. It's a heavy consumer, and I think the emissions from the cement carriers are quite, I think it's more than we think that we actually measure. They can be connected for a long time, and they can use as much power as a cruise ship. And then we have continued with shore power for cruise vessels. So last year we opened the cruise on one of the cruise quays, and next year we're opening another cruise project. Towards 2030, our plan is to build shore power for all major shipping segments, including shore power for the Northern Light project as a CO2 carrier, and then also for tankers, which is a quite interesting and difficult project. And in parallel, we have built a lot of charging infrastructure for heavy-duty trucks, because when you have these green corridors, you also have to have green transport from the port to the customer or to the storage facilities. So we have built now 43 charging facilities, hyperchargers for heavy-duty trucks. And it's really interesting to see the strong electrification trend in Norway now. So in this summer, it was quite surprisingly that we had, for all new sold cars this summer, 97% of all new cars were electric. So it's a strong electrical trend in our area. And when it comes to obstacles, I think we have a lot of the same obstacles, hurdles around in Europe. Grid capacity has been a big topic. I think we were lucky in Oslo that we were early out, but now we see that data centers and all is being built so fast, so grid capacity is a big topic. And also public procurement takes time. We need public procurement, it's transparent, fair and everything, but it takes time when we are closing the deadline for 2030. And the third, I think, a big, it's also about the business case, but it's utilization. How can we increase the utilization of the shore power systems we have? How can we ensure that ships connect as fast as they can? Now we can see that some ships are really quick, and some others you can take wait an hour or two before connection. And it's not about the technical; it's more about the operational behavior on the ship. I think I will give the mic to Edvard.
Okay, thank you, Jens. So from one front runner to another front runner, Gothenburg, and Edvard, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Port of Gothenburg was early on for the first connections. We started already in the year 2000, so 25 years ago we made the first connection for ro-ro vessels. And then 15 years ago we connected all the ferry lines and the RoPax. And they still make up the largest part if we count the number of calls that are connected. Roughly 40% of the calls, which is the ferries, are connected on a yearly basis. And then, of course, we tried to get it into the European legislation. And as soon as the European legislation was set, it was decided it's now going to be legislated that you have to connect container vessels. We then started to connect tankers instead. One might wonder why, but we managed to do so. So from this year on, we have all the small product tankers connected to OPS. And our main focus at the moment is, of course, to connect the container vessels before 2030 to fulfill the regulations. We're also looking at the remaining ro-ro vessels that are still not connected. So we're going to have more or less all various segments connected within the next 5 years, hopefully before 2030. But there's not going to be a large margin, that's for sure.
Thank you, Edvard. So now Hanno, Port of Hamburg, please.
Yeah, also similar story, I think, as with you guys. We also started out early on. Initially, it was more driven by the Clean Air Protection Plan, so to cut emissions, and therefore we actually focused initially on the cruise terminal north of the city, north of the river, close to the city, where there was the biggest emissions to be cut. And then secondly, on the large container vessels, where also you would achieve the biggest bang for the buck. So as we know now, everything is now more moving towards the climate goals of 2030, superseding everything. So making good progress on that. So we've now about to finish our third cruise terminal towards the end of the year. Next week is actually first commissioning test there with one birthplace, next month the other. So then we will have all 4 cruise terminals equipped with OPS. 3 cruise terminals, 4 birthplaces. On the container side, similarly, we opened our first terminals last year, and another one towards the end of the year, and we are heading now to open 2 more this year. So that will then allow us to have on all 4 large container terminals 10 birthplaces for the larger vessels connected. So what does it mean? It's last year we supplied about 130 cruise vessels, so that was about half the vessels we had there. This year we are already supplying more than that to date, beyond that. And on the container side, last year we started in the last quarter with 24 vessels. Now it's about also more than double to that. But it's just one terminal operation because also, fun fact, you also have some technical difficulties like a container bridge damaging your system, and then you suddenly have a downtime of half a year for your system. Things like that obviously hamper your nice statistics. What where do we go from here? Obviously, 2030 we want to be compliant, so that means we still need to build the feeder system, birthplaces. That's basically what we'll tackle till 2030. And then after 2030, it's basically the other segments, so that in 2040 we are basically carbon neutral as a port. That's the objective. Challenges we already heard, same. I think one additional challenge I want to mention for us, because we were early on in all these segments that we were targeting, there weren't so many solutions available yet. And it's great to see all the suppliers here with their solutions, and you see it's a couple of versions later down the line. Things are much more smarter than maybe some of the stuff that we have employed. So there's definitely a learning curve on the equipment side to be had there. So that definitely was a challenge at the time. Also, what we heard here with the OPSA, the move to have like this a nice document that specifies what you need to do in order to do your tender process. I mean, it was really difficult early on to come up with a proper tender, because what do you actually define, what do you prescribe if there is no blueprint or no orientation at the time? So that was another additional challenges we had. And other than that, in terms of the challenges, I think I look more into the operational side. So again, it's about the willingness of the vessel owners to connect. Some actually are front runners, they want to be early on. Some actually are not really interested in shore power yet. And given where we are, so the obligation is only kicking in 2030. Sure, that's going to be easy then, but how do you get the guys in that don't come in live? And we see that there's lots of experience to be made, not only on our side, but also on the vessel side. So many vessel owners, they connect the first time also, so they don't know how these things actually are working. And so some of them actually they have employed now actually tech teams that actually come in and assist the crews on doing that, and that would be my standard recommendation, how to get things actually moving quicker and faster. That you also need to make sure that on the vessel side they know what they're doing in terms of the processes, because there's lots of learnings to be made, and yeah, it's a joint process on that. So, and yeah, maybe on to you. Otherwise, I can continue forever.
Okay, thank you, Hanno. Last but not least, Tommaso from Haropa.
Thank you. Haropa is actually 3 ports. It's Paris, which is an inland port, then Le Havre and Rouen. When it comes to Le Havre, which is our largest seaport, when it comes to the cruise, we have 3 connection points to electrify. One is going to be operational this month, and the other 2 will be operational next year. When it comes to containers, it's another story. We're not really front runners like my colleagues here. We are trying to catch up. When it comes to containers, we have 3 terminals to electrify with 12 connection points. We are at different stages. For some of them, the works will be launched by the end of 2026. For others, the tender is about to be launched. For others, we are also waiting for the results of some call for funding, the European AFIF, the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Facility. The problems we have are obviously similar to the ones that my colleagues have mentioned, but I like what Anna said about the business model. We are going to have one business model when it comes to cruise. So we have built the installations, we are also going to operate them, therefore also maintaining them and collecting the electricity bills. We don't know whether we're going to be able to replicate the same business model for containers, and that's actually a big question indeed. There is also regulatory uncertainty, not only when it comes to France, but in general, who is eventually is going to be responsible for the operation and the maintenance eventually of the OPS installations, going to be finally the terminal operators. In different countries, there are discussions about it when it comes to transposing AFIR into national legislations, Flanders and the Netherlands, for instance. And another problem we have is the awareness. Compared to other ports, other regions, the level of awareness when it comes to OPS for us is quite low for the public, but also when it comes to decision makers. And obviously this doesn't necessarily help when it comes to looking for financing, which is obviously one of the biggest barriers that exists for OPS.
Thank you, Tommaso. Let me say, before I went up here on stage, I was checking the newspaper, the news from the IMO meeting, and I don't know if you checked, there were some declarations, not only by the US, but also from Saudi Arabia, an island next to here, as well, saying that they would vote against. It seems that the pressure against is mounting up, it seems. I don't know really what's going to happen. I think it's going to be voted tomorrow, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know. I'm not sure this is going to pass tomorrow or not. No? So this is an introduction to the second question, no? Which is the title of the panel itself. No? Some of you have answered more or less already the question, but let me insist, and I will do it the other way around, start by you, Tommaso. So, 2030, a fire, no? EU Fuel Maritime, let's wait for the net zero framework, etc., what's going to happen. But are we going to be, other ports going to be ready for mandatory onshore power supply? I know some of you more or less have answered, but if you can develop this a little bit further, please, before I give the floor to the audience. Please, Tommaso, if you can start with it.
Well, the answer is that we have to. So I'm obviously going to say that we're going to do everything we can to comply with the regulations. In a broader sense, when it comes to this legislation within the larger Fit for 55 package, we see that all this environmental legislation is really much under attack nowadays. There are lots of pressures to opening, reopening, revising, modifying legislations. When it comes to AFIR and FuelEU, it has been more stable than other pieces of legislation because there has been quite of commitment, especially coming from port authorities, to advance in the complying with the regulation, which has given some sort of stability, which has been very important compared to other environmental legislation. Then we have obviously the broader context, the global context, and your reference on the IMO is very appropriate. There is a lot of uncertainty, so I'm not going to speak about science fiction, but obviously this is another very important piece of the puzzle to take into account that could add another regulatory pressure to really make sure that by 2030 we are ready. Then there are also other operational situations, technical elements to take into account.
Yeah, make no mistake. I mean, while we came a long way already with many installations, we still have lots to do because the feeder vessels, which is basically what we're targeting the next 5 years, I mean, in core numbers, which is the basis for the regulation, I mean, it's actually obviously the majority, the vast majority, so we have to rush on that. And we have not concluded the funding yet, so therefore there is still the challenge of setting up those projects. And then, obviously, I would expect that, we get to the big crunch time in 29 anyway, when the rest of Europe or everybody is building and trying to secure the supplies of the materials. So I think probably the building times and the lag times of all that, they might actually easily extend. And that's basically what I see as the biggest risk once that the funding has been secured.
Like I already mentioned, we do aim to be ready by 2030, and definitely it's going to be a tough challenge. It is the most difficult challenge at the moment. At the same time, we should also remember that this is not the only legislation in our case. We actually have demands for OPS also within our environmental permits, and we've had that since 15 years back. So there are demands from all different levels. The difficulty is also, of course, that we don't know exactly what's going to come. You mentioned IMO and the uncertainty there. We definitely see it as a challenge that we don't know what will come or whether it will be pulled back again. We hear a lot about pulling back fuel EU and AFIR and changing the European legislation. So even though it's been stable so far, I'm not convinced it's going to continue to be stable. So we don't know what will come. But definitely ready for 2030.
Yeah, I think I touched into some of the hurdles for reaching the target, and grid capacity is maybe one of the thing that we focus a lot on. We would like the grid company to reinforce, build strong grid, because we think grid capacity is new opportunities, but as it is now, first come, first serve, and how, so they would probably, we have to have a strong collaboration to show that we have problems and it needs to be fixed if we're gonna reduce our emissions. But while we are waiting on grid connections, we are looking at ways we can use the power system in the grid much more smarter. So we have an energy policy of reducing demand, building shared infrastructure, but also looking at how shore power actually can be a resource for the grid. Because you can actually disconnect the ship, if it's problems with the grid. So what we say to the grid companies is that we, instead of they guaranteeing us 100% uptime on the grid connection, we can say that we would like 99, or we can accept 99% connection, and then you can disconnect us the coldest day in February if it's a problem. And it's better to have a grid connection 99% of the time than none at all. So that's one step we are trying to talk to our grid company with. And another is look at flexible loads, because a port has a lot of flexibility. We don't have ships, all the ships are at the port at the same time, so that's it's a flexibility around that. And also the heating in the port area can be a flexible source. And then also you have battery prices falling a lot. And as I said, we have a lot of charging infrastructure, and that is also a load that can be regulated. And by showing that this is possible in a port, then the grid company can take more risk, giving us more power, because they see that we can reduce demand if it's necessary. So that is one solution we are trying to going forward with.
Well, I am a little more pessimistic, maybe, but well, it's good that we are not agreeing now. Well, I think that saying that all the ports will be ready for 2030 is not realistic from my point of view. I agree with you, Hanno, that if all the ports at the same time decide to ask for all the materials that we need to develop OPS, the market, I don't think, is prepared to supply everything at the same time. We have, just starting 5 years ago, we have need more than 3 years to have OPS working. We have learned a lot in the middle of this way. Of course, there are ports as yours that you have been much more experienced than us, no? But we have now 3 points, and we need 30 points more from here to 2020 to 2030. And we are very lucky because we are building a substation, and we have the problem of the grid issue completely solved. But there are a lot of ports that this challenge problem, call whatever, they don't know where they are going to take the electricity. So it's a big challenge. It's very good, from my point of view, it's very good that we have the legislation, because from my point of view, in the moment that the Fit for 55 appeared, the approach with the ship owners was completely different. I remember when we started that, we started to speak with the ship owners and was like, oh yes, OPS, just maybe, just no. But yes, as after Fit for 55, it's like all of us, we are in the same direction, we are all looking at the same place. And well, so I think the legislation is good, it will help a lot. I don't think we will arrive. Maybe some ports will arrive. It depends on the points that you have to develop also. But if we try to give the positive point, is that we are in the same direction and we will arrive. Maybe not 2030, or maybe only someone 2030, but other we will arrive 2035, let's say.
Thank you all for answering. Let me say that I have been in the sector for 20 years, and OPS is one, I don't know if you agree, is one of the areas where I've seen more cooperation and information sharing between ports and even competitors, I would say. No, there's other sectors where it's very difficult to get different ports together and sharing information, sharing experience. The front runners have been very helpful to the newcomers, Scandinavian ports, ports from California, no? And I think this an area where, I don't know, port cooperation is outstanding, I would say, compared to other areas where everybody lives in its own silo and they don't want to share their experience with a competitor, etc. So I don't know, unless some of the here in the panel want to say something, I would leave the floor now to the audience. Please take advantage of having these ports here to learn or ask, please. So you have a question? Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, this is mostly for Jens Erik and Edvard. We have some terminals of our own up in Oslo and Gävle. And I would like to know the rationale for why you postponed container. Technical challenge, or just because you have extra time, or what? Because you didn't mention container and you put it off in favor of tankers, which to me is a harder problem.
So I didn't hear exactly what you said, but the why we're not prioritizing container?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we are opening shore power's facility for containers this month for feeders, but that's it's a discussion going forward. What will be? You still don't have that many ships that are fitted, and I think that's one learning from our work with shore power is that before it was like the chicken and the egg discussion. And then you got the chicken, Afer, and then the egg, Fuel Maritime. So that has solved a lot of the discussions. But before that, I remember we built, for example, shore power for the international ferries. And we got funding, and we started building, and the ship wouldn't commit to using shore power, even though it was like going back and forth every day or every other day. But we started digging, start building a shore power system. We got headlines in the news saying that Port of Oslo is investing that much money on shore power, but no one will use it. But with those headlines, the ship owner actually did say and commit to using the shore power. So I think that was kind of a situation that made us a little bit more think that we could just, the future is electric, we should just build out shore power and the demand will come. So that is probably what the port authority can do to take that, to take that risk.
In the case of Gothenburg, why we went for certain segments at certain times, it's for a number of different reasons. Actually, the first OPS installation was actually driven by a cargo owner's interest. When it comes to the ferries, their terminals are located downtown with emissions and noise affecting the city people. Hence, that was driven by the environmental authorities, pushing that into the environmental permits. When it comes to the tankers, that was actually ship owners' interest, and they asked for it specifically. Whereas in the container case, it's been driven by regulation, which is coming in 2030, therefore we aim for 2030. So it's a different case in each and every one.
Thank you. Another question over there. You can introduce yourself and the institution you represent.
My name is Faruk Doğan, and I am the Secretary General of Turkish Port Operators Association. Actually, as an old electric engineer, I have to admit that I love OPS. But there are some concerns in the sector, some of which from the European port operators as well. Other than US-led opposition to this case, some of the port operators are concerning that what if we're ready, but ships are not on the due date? Or IMO or EU could postpone the due date if thinks that the ports or ships are not ready, or create a backdoor to overcome this this issue. That's why some of them are on the side of wait and see. That's why actually for those people we need a clarification that this can never be happen, or everything will be done on the date. So we have to encourage them. We have to create an awareness for them who are reluctant to move. I'm waiting for your answers on that. Thank you very much.
I agree that the risk of stranded assets is really something what we want to avoid, of course, because as a port authorities we are investing a lot. So obviously we want to make sure that the ships will connect. In the French port of Dunkirk, the first OPS installation was built, if I'm not mistaken, 10 years ago. So it was like really much before AFIR and FuelEU were really in the mind of DG Klima. And it was used once. So we need indeed to make sure that there is continuous dialogue with our customers. And of course, insist on a level of awareness. That's one of the problems that we are encountering that I mentioned before. So I agree with you that the risk of stranded assets is absolutely is a bit of something that we need to be really aware of.
Yeah, and I would be wary to drop the 2030 target too early, because I mean it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, if you don't believe in it, then it won't become reality anyway. So I think we all as ports need to make our best efforts to ensure that we are ready by 2030. And I think also this chicken and egg thing is typically in infrastructural situations, it is the infrastructure that needs to come first, I think, and then the users will come. I think you can't expect the users to convert first. So therefore, I think we also as ports have the obligation to be a little bit ahead of time. Obviously, not without any economic sense, and obviously you want to make sure that you take along the vessel owners and get them to commit. But another way, obviously, is the collaboration between the ports, so that you actually do like the corridor move or get collaborations across the ports, so that it makes be more attractive for the liner companies to actually be ready with their vessels, etc. So these are all complementing dialogues to make it happen and to achieve the goal.
I think also that from the ship owner point of view, if you see into the vessels that are already in construction, nearly all of them are prepared for shore power. All of them is much more efficient from the economical point of view to prepare the vessel with shore power, and they are doing. And also, as Hanno has said, is much better or much fast for the ship owners to convert the vessel. In our case, for example, in case of containers, we have had no problem because we have a lot of containers that are coming to the port of Barcelona prepared for OPS, and they are already connected in Hamburg, in China, in America. So they are already done this. So it's something that is starting to be very normal for them. But in the case of ferries, for example, that we don't have fleet enough, at the end was an agreement with the ship owner, and the ship owner refit the vessel faster than we made the installation, we made the infrastructure. So I think all the port, we should looking ahead and try to prepare our infrastructure, because this is really coming, is here, and is here to stay, because nowadays is the way that we know and the technology that we know that really has a big impact on the emissions on the port. In the port of Barcelona, just for having you an idea, 47% of the total emission of the ports are doing by the vessel when they are docking. So with OPS technology, we can reduce nearly 50% of our emission. So we have to.
I think there's another question over there, please.
I'm Tim Marks. I'm a director for Rotterdam Shore Power. And in Port of Rotterdam, we will be ready for in 2030. But I have a question for you. Regarding the AFIR and the regulation uncertainty, would you consider also making shore power mandatory in your port yourself? Because I think you invested now a lot in shore power. We also talked about the need to have a business model. I think the regulation makes that you can have a business model. If there's no regulation, you risk not having a business model, not only having subsidies for your capex, but also subsidies for your operations, and that can go on forever. So is that something you consider in your port to making it shore power mandatory yourself?
Yeah, I saw that on the state budget to Norway, they would like to see if they can have a mandatory shore power requirement by 2027. They haven't said what kind of ships, but that would be, I think, as a port, we think that all ship segments should have a mandatory requirement in some point to connect, so that we would love to have even stricter requirements. And also another thing that we try to when a ship owner is asking, how much is it for shore power at your port? Then the message is shore power is the cheapest option in the port, because you have to balance all the environmental port cost and everything, and then we can give financial incentives for the ship that connects, and it makes it a little bit more difficult for all other ship companies that do not connect to shore power. So it shouldn't be the first mover that has to pay down the shore power system. It should be divided on everyone.
We in the new terminals that we are giving under concession, because this is the model that we have. In the concession, they have the obligations to connect to shore power in the moment that the shore power will be ready. So this is something that we have already done for the new concession that they are not so much. So for the rest, I see a future in which we have when we have the service prepared. I think we can go to this model of having some legislation also inside the port, yes, to connect it, to apply the vessel to connect it, because at the end it's part of our energy transition.
Okay, we have one last question. Time for one just last question.
Sorry, can I just one?
Yeah, please.
Because
No, of course. Go ahead.
Quickly also want to reply, because that's also one discussion that's close to my heart. We are definitely thinking about whether there is some force that one can apply, let me call it like that. Whether it's an obligation or whether it's structured port tariffs or something like that. I mean, there's a whole range of things that you could do. And I think you need to also differentiate between the cruise segment and the container segment. I think in cruise it's much more reality, and I think if we talk about an obligation, that would much more target the long tail of the segments, the vessel owners with old vessels that only come there every now and then. I think all the major liner companies in Europe, they have committed to Haropa already, so I think therefore it's more the question whether you want to target the long tail in there. And that's something we are also considering, if that is something that we want to do. But then also for that, you also have to bear in mind you have to be ready at all the terminals that there are, because you can't have a differentiation when you have one terminal has the Haropa and the other one hasn't, and you use an obligation, so that doesn't work. So before you talk about an obligation, you have to have a service offering in all the different terminals. And on the container side, again, I mean, it's the same thing. The question there is, are we also going to be ready everywhere? And if one talks about these measures, we certainly also would be looking into the other major ports along our trade. I mean, we have the MOU jointly among the northwestern European range that has opened that discussion, and so let's see how everybody is progressing with the installations. But I'm sure that, for example, if somewhere in the northwestern range are not ready with the Haropa installation, it doesn't make sense to talk about an obligation at all in Europe. Yeah.
Thank you. So last question, please.
Thank you, Jordi. I won't take much of your time, but one question I would like to ask the panel. It relates about pricing. Pricing for the electricity consumed by container vessels. I'm talking about container vessels because I come from Malta Freeport Corporation, and during discussions I had with shipping representatives, the first question that they asked, what is the price for the unit that we'll be consuming? So what I'm seeing here, until the OPS is obligatory, 2030, they won't make that extra pressures if the price is high. Is it opportune that through EOPSA, we all form part of the TEN-T, a common price is set up so that there is similarity and the price is competitive for the shipping vessels to make use of the OPS prior to 2030. Thank you.
Who wants to take it? By the way, David Magro, CEO of Malta Freeport.
I mean, I find it difficult to have a standard European price for Haropa, to be honest, because I think, as we've learned, I mean, every port is different, has different premises, every electricity market is different. Some don't even have the power to available to supply. So therefore, like trying to find a regime that actually fits all, I think is very, very difficult. And obviously, everybody has their interest to get the best price possible, for sure. And but I think also due to the measures the European Union has taken already with ETS and all of that, I don't think that we have such a huge cost gap, especially if we are in a situation where like everybody is taking shore power like 2030, the fixed costs are going to spread across so many numbers of users, so the cost that you have to recoup are so much more lower. So I think I definitely see the chance that you get to some form, I don't want to say like a comparable price, let's put it like that.
Okay, I don't know if someone from the panel wants to say last words. Edvard?
I could just mention that I see no reason to have a set price on electricity for OPS, because we do not have that for other types of energy that we use for vessels. So why should we have it for electricity? It's going to be a market that will evolve.
Okay, so I think they are calling us off, so we should leave it here. I would ask you to give a round of applause to the panel, please.